We're going to talk about knowing. What do you know? What do you know you know? And what do you know you don't know? This has been a topic that I've seen coming up all week, personally, and then also with all of you who I've been working with and talking to. And we have some action with Mercury in the sky, and Mercury is all about knowing. And the South Node is in Virgo, which is also in many ways about knowing, and definitely about being right in what we know and what we do. So first of all, I released this ego talk, which a lot of you have listened to and you've given me some feedback. And I had a handful of you actually that came to me afterwards and said, oh, wow, my ego got really triggered listening to that. Or I realized after I'd listened to it that I was doing something that triggered my ego. And one thing for all of us to remember is that we're all here doing very unique versions of life. So although we share a lot of stuff in common, we're humans having the human experience, and we move through these astrological archetypes pretty consistently. We all feel, we all think, we all want to be seen, we all want to be perceived, we all have our idea of success, we have our mission and purpose. So we share those things in common, but the way that we reach those things is going to be incredibly unique to each of us because our souls come in and we have so many past lives and soul memories. So our soul has all of this extra information and it wants to learn things that our human can't conceptualize or isn't aware of. And then we have our human that's trying to do the things that is conditioned through the lens of what we have been taught in our society, conditioning, parenting, etc. And then, of course, we have our higher power that is wanting to experience itself through us. And if true nature or God wants to experience itself through us, of course, it doesn't want cookie cutter thoughts and experiences and emotions. It wants everybody to have a very unique and complex experience. So when we're talking about something like the ego, who's to say that you're doing it wrong or that you're doing it right? And we talked a lot about that in my last talk of what does doing it right mean? And what does being right really mean? So we're going to get into it. I'm Natha Perkins of Astrology. If you like my style and you want to work with me privately, you can find me at electraastrology.com. So this is the path ahead. This is my astrology forecast for the week of July 28th through August 3rd. We want to know what the future holds. We want to know what we're doing here. We want to know why we're having memories or having experiences or what's bubbling up in our consciousness or in our field. We want to know. Somebody the other day said, you don't need to know. You can just clear it. And then another person said, you already know. You know everything. You just have to remember. And I agree with both of those things, although I also disagree with both of those things. And again, this is where our unique experience comes in, because if I personally don't know what's going on, because for me, if something bubbles up in my consciousness, I want to understand it. I want to look at all of the dark places. I want to turn it around and around and around because there's something that's really valuable for me about understanding, about pulling in the threads of the story, seeing pieces that I hadn't seen before, and wanting to understand. And it is in that understanding for me that I am usually able to heal the aspect. So when I hear somebody say something like, you can just clear it, I say, no, that doesn't work. But here's where we have to get discerning, right? As I keep saying in these talks, we have to listen to ourselves. Just because somebody or some teacher or some friend or some therapist tells you something, you can just clear it. It doesn't mean that that's what's going to work for you. Now, that might be what works for them. And you might have had experiences where you were able to just clear something. So there's always this nuance. Nothing is black and white in the realm of being human, in the realm of understanding where we've come from. We don't totally understand it, and we won't while we're in this embodiment. What we're doing though is we have to trust that we can listen to ourselves and we can know what's right for us. For me, if I just try to snap and heal something, that is spiritual bypassing. That's me pretending like everything's healed when really it's not. Now, the question of, do I need to know everything? Am I addicted to knowing everything? Well, sometimes yes, I feel that that can be a hindrance because I can spend so much time ruminating and thinking and processing. There is a fine line, and I think this is probably true for a lot of you listening. There's a fine line between just over processing everything and thinking of the same storylines, the same conversations, and landing at the same conclusions. That is mental busyness. That's where we get our Mercury mind in and wants to just keep thinking and thinking and pulling up facts to support the story. But on the other side of that is a sense of exploration, wanting to know, wanting to keep looking at different parts of the story, keep getting new pieces of information in that help you to understand the story better. So in that case, addicted to knowing, it depends on what kind of knowing you're addicted to. And again, we are self-responsible here. That's one of the things that Saturn is teaching us. It's teaching us how to be the master of our own authority. Saturn is in retrograde right now. It's in the sign of Aries. That is where we have been discovering our personal power. We've been really understanding on a deeper level what our yeses and our nos are. And now it's retrograde. It's headed back into Pisces. So we go back into the spiritual understanding or attempting to understand. So your level of mastery, your ability to say, this is what's right for me, and it might not be right for you. This is how I'm experiencing it, and it might not be how you're experiencing it. This is where you have to be your own authority that says, just because I heard this person say it doesn't mean that it's true. Or just because my inner critic is translating this in a certain way, it doesn't mean that it's true. Because we're all here doing it really differently. And so we have to be careful who we're listening to. And we have to be careful what we're believing. And we have to trust that our source connection is leading us in the right direction, that there is something higher that is guiding us. So it's not about getting into the weeds and saying, oh no, I messed that up. Oh no, my ego got the best of me. Oh, here I was trying to understand a situation, but so and so just told me that I didn't need to understand it, that I could just clear it. And then so and so over here told me that I was addicted to knowing, and so maybe I'm not supposed to be thinking it through. And then someone over here said, you're allowed to think it through. You just can't ruminate. Like, it gets really complicated if we're trying to follow everybody else's rules and we're trying to embody everybody else's opinions. Okay, so I want to just start off talking about this week, giving you some food for thought and giving you a challenge to say, look, this is your experience. And you, although you're not in control of so many parts of your experience, you are in control of some parts of it, which is to say, this is what's right for me. And this is what is not right for me. And this is what I want to become more conscious of. This is where I'd like to be more curious. And this is how I would like to begin to work with myself. Because Source knowing itself through us, a large part is remembering who we are and getting to know this particular version, this incarnation that you are here with in this life. So we can get addicted to knowing about the past lives, about the spiritual information, about the answers, about what we should be doing. Like, we can get really hooked into all of those things. And all of those things hold a certain kind of valuable information for us. But the bottom line is that we're here to learn about this particular version of us in this particular incarnation. And I believe that we're here to remember our higher power and our connection to God and to all that is. And we do that by becoming intimate with ourselves, with who we are. The sun is in Leo right now, and Leo is the archetype that represents the truest expression of who we are. And in order to hit that true expression, We have to be curious about who we are, about what's here. Right? So think about yourself as an adolescent and how it wasn't about who you were. It was about what everybody else was doing and how could you be more like them so that they perceived you in a way that was good. And then think about how often you still to this day hold yourself back from really truly expressing who you are or even knowing who you are because you're busy worrying about what so and so thinks, what they said. Am I doing this right? Am I on task? I'm so busy wanting to get a general sense of approval from, listen, that could be from society, that could be from specific people in your life, that could be from your own internal dialogue and inner critic. And with the South Node being in Virgo right now, we're looking at getting rid of that constant need for approval. So that means that you are going to disagree with some people, and that's okay. And you aren't going to want to follow somebody's doctrine, and that's okay. And you're going to overthink, and you're going to underthink, and you're going to have emotional reactivity, and that's okay. This is about getting to know yourself, watching all of the myriad versions of you, and seeing what triggers me. What situations do I need to avoid? I've come to understand something about myself in the past few years that has been a game changer. I get overstimulated really easily. If there are too many layers of sounds, too many different smells, I start to spaz out. My brain stops working. And then I get really bitchy or I shut down. And knowing that about myself helps me because, first of all, I can forgive myself when I lose my temper. And I can also advocate for myself when I need to just leave the room and I need some alone time and some quiet time. I didn't know that about myself before. And so I was just trying to navigate through life, making everybody happy. And the times of doing that are coming to a close. I'm sure it exhausts you when you're out there trying to make everybody happy and you're trying to ignore who you are and what you need as a soul. And when we're always trying to follow everybody else's advice, idea, plan, teaching, guidance, we totally lose touch with who we are. If you feel like you know something, great. If something works for that person, great. We're not here trying to change everybody. We're here trying to self focus so that we can know ourselves, so that higher power, true nature, can know itself through us. All right, let's look at the charts. So we've just finished out this week where both the sun and the moon made connections to Uranus, Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto. These outer planets that are connected to that higher level knowledge, that spiritual knowledge, which when interacting with our sun and our moon, bring that spiritual knowledge into personal exploration. So think about what the last week was like for you. And just take a deep breath because it was a lot. I talked to some of you who were very tired, some that were energized, some that had big ego triggers, some that were very emotional, and some that just had some real aha moments. So we were really in the thick of it. It was like having a whole panel of spiritual teachers in front of us in the form of Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus. And we were absorbing whatever the teachings were that they were bringing us, each unique to each of us. Now, this week, we begin with Venus. Now, Venus is at 27 degrees of Gemini, and it's making a sextile to Chiron. Venus is our values. So, in getting to know who we are, we have to look at what we value, what is important. What brings us a sense of safety and security? What do we connect with that feels abundant? I've been spending a lot of time outside. The garden is absolutely exploding right now with basil. I've been picking the basil and putting it into salads and making pesto with it. And that to me feels so abundant. I'm eyeing up all of the lemon balm that's growing on the property. And I'm thinking about what am I going to do with that? I'm going to cut it. I want to dry it. I want to make some infusions. For me, that is what feels really abundant right now. I'm in awe when I look around this property and I think, wow, like this is Earth. I get to live here. And of course, there's a bunch of noise going on in the outskirts. But like, wow, this is really important to me right now. And this is where I want to put my focus. I want to spend time outside. I want to sit by the river. I want to harvest the abundance that's on the land. So for me, that is part of my Venus work right now. And I'm noticing that with Venus in a sextile to Chiron, that our values, ideally, we're healing something about them. And you hear me talk all the time about the values that are empty, the values of buying expensive purses or getting to a certain body weight so that you're attractive to strangers or winning arguments over politics. You know, that stuff just pales in comparison to true abundance. So imagine that you're having an argument, and actually, this is a story that has been going on in the background of my life. People that I know and love arguing over political stuff. What's the point, right? Because at the end of the day, they love each other. The politics is irrelevant compared to the years that these people have spent building this relationship with one another. So this week, when we get really true with our values and we get really clear about what our values are, it's healing. It's healing something within us to get your hands in the dirt, to stand outside and appreciate the life that you have, to connect on a deeper level with somebody that you love, even if there's stuff in the field where people have been disappointed or hurt. That is the healing power of Chiron and Venus in sextile. Because Venus is a main player this week. As we progress the chart a few days, what we see is Venus getting ready to leave Gemini. Now, Uranus, remember, has just entered into Gemini. And Venus and Uranus were actually dancing together for a while at the beginning degrees of Gemini, and they were also in Aries together. So there's something here as Gemini is our mind, and it's how we perceive. Our perception, of course, gets really swayed by what's going on around us. If you have a headache, your perception of how loud the kids at the next table are being is going to be really different than if you are the grandparents of the kids at the table next to you, right? Like, oh, these are the coolest kids I've ever seen. And then you have a headache over here, you don't know these strangers, and you're like, oh my God, shut up. Uranus moving into Gemini, we are being asked and will continue to be asked for the next 8 or so years to change our perceptions. Just look at it differently. Take a deep breath. Look at, in my case, this is what I want to choose to look at anyway. I want to look at the beauty, at the optimism, at the abundance of the potential, the way that I can manipulate the energy around me using my mind. You guys have heard me say this. If you want to practice manipulating energy in a positive way, throw blessings on people that you're walking by on the sidewalk. Throw blessings on somebody that you can tell that they're in pain. Throw blessings on bikers on the street, on motorcyclists. I like to throw blessings on anybody that I feel might need a little extra golden energy. Okay. So if you want to practice manipulating the energy around you for good, do that. This is the power of the mind. Yes, we can use our minds to get us from point A to point B and to do math problems and to research the facts, but wow, our brains are capable of so much more. And as you're probably noticing, your capacity for telepathy is getting stronger. Your ability to know what's going to happen is getting more intense. We have these brains and we haven't even begun to know how to use them. So, our values are also getting recalibrated in that respect too. Now, Venus does change signs into the sign of Cancer on July 30th. This is a change from thinking about values into the feeling, the emotional part of the values. So we're beginning to watch how things feel and how we emotionally respond to what we now perceive to be valuable. So again, keep watching because you may have things that you have prioritized that you realize aren't a fit at all anymore. So over the next few days, watch Venus basically run the same gauntlet as the sun and the moon, where Venus at 1 degree is going to now square both Saturn and Neptune. Now, the sun and the moon were in a harmonious aspect to Saturn and Neptune. A square brings up some tension and some difficulty. This recalibration of our value system, and values is like who we love, what we're attracted to, what we want more of, money, self-worth, confidence. And Venus in Cancer can definitely be emotionally triggered, right? So sometimes it's like, I want to feel self confident, but one of my teachers just told me I'm overthinking. And now that's kind of taken a hit. It's making me second guess myself. Now, with Saturn, remember, Saturn is our mentor, and Saturn is the energy that says, wait a minute, I have autonomy here, I have responsibility here. I don't have to take a hit to my self esteem because somebody has disagreed with me. What I want to do is I want to really get into this. Wow, this is interesting. I have been triggered. And we always say use your triggers as your entry points into what needs to be explored, what needs to be sussed out so that you can get a deeper understanding. And I am one of the teachers that's going to say, hey, understanding yourself is going to be one of the keys to healing. The more you know, the more puzzle pieces you have to complete the puzzle, right? For me, I am about helping you remember who you are, helping you remember what has happened in the past so that you can be like, oh, right. Wow, okay, that did happen. I forgot about that. And no wonder I'm having this reaction. So I'll use an example. I have always hated the wind. It gives me a deep sense of being unsettled. In fact, last night we were all sitting on the patio having dinner and the wind started blowing, and immediately I'm overstimulated. And I'm saying, uh-oh, if the wind keeps blowing, we have to go inside. And it started this whole conversation about wind. And one of my dinner guests was suggesting that perhaps because we had grown up in Colorado, that we had something with the wind because the wind gets going here. And it gets going in a really unsettling way. And I was remembering a story. We lived in a house when I was younger that was right up against the foothills. And because of the way that the mountains were positioned, the wind would come down the foothills really strongly. And it would shake the house, it would shake the big picture window. And I remember my parents having a huge board of plywood that they would go out to the garage to get to actually put in front of the window to block the wind. Well, I did not remember until my mom reminded me one time that my sister and I were eating dinner at the table right in front of the window, and the wind blew the window in, and there was glass everywhere. Once I remembered that story, it made so much more sense to me about why wind was unsettling, why I had this visceral reaction when the wind started blowing, almost of panic. And so for me, knowing that has really helped me to understand this is one of the reasons why I hate wind. Otherwise, I just would have been super annoyed and panicky when the wind started blowing. But now at least I know, so I can take a minute and say, it's okay. The window is not about to blow in. I am not about to be caught off guard. So you see, for me, a deeper understanding, a deeper knowing is helpful as opposed to just clearing it, right? So for you, as Venus is in Cancer, for the next month or so, you might also come to a similar conclusion. Like, I want to know what the emotional trigger is so that I can come into a deeper form of mastery with it. That's Saturn. And then, of course, Neptune is always about the spiritual connection and deeply understanding. And we could say, in the case of the example I just shared with you, an ability to tune in and say, ooh, my intuition is like pinging right now. And that's because I've had strange situations with wind in my past. Now, we're also watching as Venus makes this quincunx to Pluto. This is an inconjunct. This is anxiety. So unfortunately for Venus, she's not making any easy connections. The sun and the moon made some really lovely connections. But this is like Venus meeting the panel of the spiritual teachers, and they're holding her feet to the fire a little bit. So, in the case of Pluto, this might mean like you have to really question yourself. Why am I valuing this thing? Or is this emotional reaction even necessary? Do I need to keep telling myself the same storyline? Now, on July 31st, we also have this Sun Mercury Cazimi, where Mercury is making a conjunction with the Sun going into the heart of the Sun. Now, this is an inferior conjunction because Mercury is in retrograde, meaning that this is where we get information about something important. We're not able to act on it yet, but this is a week of great insight, and it might come around these Venus things. Remember, the sign of Leo, where both the Sun and Mercury are, it helps us to get clear about who we are and about what we are doing. It is helping us to remember why we're here, why we came to this particular life on this planet at this time. And even though that information will probably never be laid out completely clearly, like as if you had a manual for it, you are getting bits and pieces of insight that is helping you to further create the path. You know, it's like giving you the next step or two of the path. And as I always say, there's something so important about being in the present moment, being here today, understanding who you are today. Of course, we're putting together pieces from our history and we're getting curious about what's in the future. But the real juice, the real interesting stuff is in what's happening right now. And as true nature wants to experience itself through us, think of how few people are very present and very conscious. And you listening to this probably have more moments of consciousness, although, we're in and out of it all the time. But imagine you, every moment that you spend just with yourself, just noticing what's going on in this moment and how relaxing that is. And what a nervous system settle and how that settles your nervous system. Imagine how that must feel to source, to have somebody that's experiencing a settled nervous system, if only for a few minutes. So I would say another one of your missions for this week is you're tuning into your heart. You're asking your heart, who am I? What do I want? You're tuning into all of your emotions and you're saying, what's here? And what is valuable here? And what do I not need here? And you're open to any insight that's coming in. You're learning to trust yourself and you're learning to just be with exactly what's here without needing a bunch of approval, without needing to follow a bunch of rules and dictates that other people have laid out, and just practicing being here with who you are in this moment. All right. I hope this was helpful. I shall talk to you all soon.